with repetition. Repetition could be the first thing that your ear hears and that your eyes see, and I want you to get used to focusing on that to build your brain for you to notice and hear as you hear the speech read in your head. That you can notice it right away. So repetition could be single words repeated, or it could be a phrase repeated, or it could be the actual structure of a sentence or a phrase repeated. Repetition is the umbrella, a couple different pieces of repetition or types of repetition or devices that have repetition as part of it. One of them being parallelism, the other alliteration. So with alliteration, sounds at the beginning of words are repeated. And with parallelism, we have different chunks of the way a sentence is written that's repeated, or different ways the word endings are repeated to match. And then I circled parallelism because it's a really rich rhetorical device to use and get a lot of mileage out of. It's one that I recommend you practicing and knowing super well because it can show that relationship between two or more things in a contrast or compare. So again, if you notice repetition, you could just go with repetition as a rhetorical device. You could also have repetition and parallelism and alliteration if you wanted to for your three devices, if you can separate them out and find two examples of each for your essay. So the same umbrella thing is going on with analogy, and then underneath analogy we have simile and metaphor. Analogy is, like I said in class, like a souped up car. It's more than a car, right? Analogy is more than a metaphor. It's more than a simile. It is extended with more language, with more detail. It kind of builds this richer image in your mind, right? Whereas metaphor is something, God of war, right? It's putting two opposing things or contrasting things together real short and brief to create an image of what that one thing is that the writer's trying to say. And simile uses like or as to make that real short comparison, whereas metaphor is extended. So irony and verbal irony. Verbal irony is what we're going to notice a lot in rhetoric because it is the art of speaking and putting language together. Why is irony used? Well, first of all, what is it? It is the difference between not and badly, two double negatives cancel each other out to make the opposite, which should be a positive of that opposite, you're doing well. There's a difference. When you hear it, you're doing well. You're not doing badly at all. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to get to that one in our next presentation. We talked about parallelism. Look, this is one that I want you to know because a lot of speeches contain parallelism. It's also really rich, so you can get a lot of mileage out of it, right? And parallelism does, like a lot of rhetorical devices, it captures the reader's attention. It enhances the flow and the rhythm. But, and this is where you can get into some real good and real strong analysis, it sets up relationships between two or more things by showing a comparison or a contrast. And again, you're going to dig in with those questions. Why is the writer using parallelism? Well, first, how is this example parallelism? What do I know that parallelism does? If it's a comparison and contrast, what is the writer comparing and contrasting here? Why? What is the overall effect on the audience? And so that's the kind of questions that you'll be using. Again, please use this, please practice this, because 90% of the time you're going to find some type of parallelism. Either the endings of words in a list, right, are parallel structure, they end the same, or you have the repetition of phrases and the endings of those phrases may change to show a comparison or contrast. And I just want to say one more thing. In Jesse Williams' speech, notice the ending of the speech. He's going to use parallelism to drive the energy towards the end, to rise in urgency of his message. And you have to know the message, remember, before you write the essay. Analogy we already we took a look at. It is explaining by comparing it even further. We have metaphors, we have similes. But look, if you're reading something and you see a metaphor, don't spend more than a minute. Like, that's a lot of time in a 40-minute time period where you read and write. So if you think it's a metaphor, go with a metaphor and question yourself with the questions that I've been asking with a metaphor. Don't stress on, is it an analogy? So you can analogy, right? Broad comparisons, a lot of words, multiple things are compared, or two different things are compared, but using ideas, full sentences, full phrases to build that comparison. And here we go as an example of analogy. You're finding your car keys is like finding a needle in a haystack. Again, this is the test that I use. If I'm reading something, like if I was reading Jesse Williams' speech and I think it's an analogy, not sure, what's the quick test? Is it as complex as finding a needle in a haystack? Because that's different than saying, your keys are this. Your keys just are this. That would be a metaphor. Your keys are like this. No, it's like it's like finding my car keys. You're talking about finding them is like finding this needle in a haystack. So two separate complete thoughts to join them together to make analogy. Whereas metaphor is just something is something else. God of war. Okay? My sister is the devil. So is, was, were, those are the be verbs are signals for metaphor. Simile, let me move this sequence. Simile has the like or as. But again, don't stress forever. If you see a simile, go with simile. If you think it's analogy, then go with that. Alliteration, again in Jesse Williams' speech, the beginnings of words are repeat sounds. And he uses it where there are words in between those repeating sounds, still alliteration. When does he use it? What part of the speech? What part of delivering his message is he using it in? What image does he create with alliteration? Why does he want our ear to go to this part? Why does this create a sense of urgency? Does it expose something? How does he use it? Colloquialism or colloquial language. Got to practice the spelling of this and get to know this. Williams uses this a lot. So you have to know the audience before you can fully analyze colloquialism. And before you read the reading passage, right, you want to know where and how, like, to whom is this writer, this speaker delivering this speech? If it's Ta-Nehisi Coates delivering his speech to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, it's going to be a very different type of style of speaking than Jesse Williams delivering an award speech at a BET ceremony, awards humanitarian social justice ceremony, award ceremony. So his audience, celebrities, like musicians, artists, people with a lot of style, young people watching from home, versus Coates, you have Mitch McConnell, politicians, right? Predominantly white men, very different in a very formal setting, right? So colloquialism, got to know your audience. How does that writer speak to the audience? Does the writer speak in a language known to the audience? Does the writer speak in the audience's language, using words from the audience's language? So when Jesse Williams says, yo, the test is to see if it's colloquial. Will Coates, would he say yo in front of the Senate Judiciary? No. And then you also got to think, who is the speaker, right? Jesse Williams is an actor. He's seen more as on the informal level, where Coates is a professor. He's an academic. He's a historian. If Coates did use that at the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, he would blow up the entire speech. So he could have, but that would be another rhetorical choice. So I like colloquialism because you can build in how the writer connects with the audience. Um, Very important. It's also connecting with the ideas. So Williams is very smart. He's using colloquialism to draw in a connection to the audience, to say, I'm one of you, we are in this together, but to also get the audience to buy into his beliefs and to take his beliefs on as their own. And that's going to be the same for anyone who uses colloquialism in their speech.